Hi, everybody. My name is Larry, and I'm an alcoholic. And I want to thank the committee for going out on the limb and having me come out here. And I've enjoyed this conference very well. Some of the finest speakers that I know have been here, and truly blessed to be among you today. It's a little different from the last time I was here. The last time I was here, 2013 or something like that, I shared the rooms over there and with some Jehovah's Witnesses. They were loaded up down there, and there was nothing wrong with that. But about 3 o'clock in the morning, I had a tremendous desire to go grab my big book and go door to door. You know Bill and Bob love you, you know. Just to see if they answered the door butt naked. But I'm glad to be here, and my sponsor tells me that I'm living proof that a man can stay sober for a little over 40 years and not amount to a damn thing. So I'm here to give you folks some hope. I would like to tell you that all my defects have been removed, but I still tote them around to this day, you know. And the blessing that I have is that they're not as wild as they used to be, you know. They just, I didn't know I had defects, you know. It was the way that it was, you know. I didn't know, it was just the way that it was, the way that I behaved and everything like that. And it was just automatic reaction to life, you know. This sense of entitlement, this, something for nothing guy. You know, I got sloth running all through me, lust and all that. And, I just thought that was what I was armed with. I was armed with the facts about me, you know. And I have nobody to blame. My life is my fault. I come from good people. I was born in Detroit, and I came out to California when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And, you become what you're around. I'm one of these guys who are easily influenced by who I'm around. And that's what makes Alcoholics Anonymous so precious to me, is that I was very confused as a kid, you know, and Mom and Dad aren't the reason that, that I'm an alcoholic or anything like that, but I was easily confused, you know. My mom was a little Scandinavian lady, and she loved diet pills, you know, and so she was always running around the house around midnight, you know, and seemed like we were always on the move, you know, and she was a great lady, and my dad was a happy drunk. My dad was a happy singing the blues, Nat King Cole, Bobby Darin drunk, and he was a window climbing alkie, is what he was. He used to get drunk and sneak into his own home, you know, which I believe is a lost art in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know what I mean? That old window climber that's standing on that gas meter and pounding on that window all night, hoping that it's his own home, getting ready to make that magic dive, you know, over the toilet into the sink. And, I had 2 sisters, and I felt like an only child, you know, and just lost in that place, you know. They had some fights, and they got a divorce, and they put me in a little foster home and a little orphanage for a while, and then several years later they got together and gave a countless venitum and brought us out to California, you know. And I tell you, I couldn't wait to run away. I couldn't wait to run away. I just didn't belong in that place. And things that were going on and the violence and stuff like that, I felt terrible because I wasn't able to stop it. I felt like I just couldn't stand to hear my mom's voice and stuff like that and not be able to do anything about it. And man, I held on to that for a long time, you know. But I couldn't wait to start running away and all that, and because I felt more a part of life around a street corner than I did around my own dinner table, you know. And at around 11 years old, I'm in a little garage, and they started passing around a bottle of Four Rose whiskey, and for the first time in my life, man, I felt a part of something. I was with these other kids, and, I never laughed so hard in all my life. I never threw up so much in all my life, and that evening at the age of 11, I kissed my first Latin woman, and it was my aunt, I went after her, and made my uncle a little edgy, and, I didn't head out to Skid Row the next day and lose my paper out and come to AA, you know what I mean? But for the first time in my life, it shut my head off. It shut that god-awful head that's constantly chattering and telling me to do stuff, and it just all brought it down to one voice, and it was all right, I remember walking home that day and that night, and falling into a bunch of bushes and laughing and stuff like that, and finally getting home and sneaking into that house and wondering where the bear was. I know Dad was around there somewhere, and I looked out there, the car was gone, and I thought, great, he's not here, man. And went back into my bedroom, and I fell in that bed. It started turning around and, started spinning around real fast, and I woke up the next morning, and I thought, oh my God, he's going to light me up. He damn near sawed my arms off for smoking. He's just going to really let me have it. And I looked out looking for him, and I went down the hallway and snuck into his room and got got into it. My dad had a bar in there, and it wasn't a bar where you could line up 20 guys or anything like that, you know what I mean? It was an alky bar. It was like this, it fit one guy, comfortably, And I thought I could go in there and get a shot of that Thunderbird wine that he always had stashed in there, and I snuck into that room, and man, there was a lock about the size of this book on there, man. He knew who was down the hall, And that morning I didn't think about anything but where it had transported me. Now, I've always known I was a nothing. I've always known that I was a nobody. And you hear about it long enough, and you're told that long enough, you get to believe it, and you get to behave like it. And I tell you what happened to this nobody is that for 5 hours I was somebody. Man, and I bought that hook, line, and sinker, because I would rather be a part-time somebody than an all-time nobody any day. And this was the stuff that did it. And like I said, I didn't go home and, lose my paper out and come to you, but I marked that spot where I was and what had happened. And the older I got, the more I pursued it, And by the time I got into high school, I started hanging around some folks, and most kids were going to their locker rooms and getting their books and stuff. And I went to my locker room and I got a little shot of Thunderbird wine and stuff like that, and I started dating this little Mexican girl, and she had some brothers, and they liked cars, and I liked cars, and we didn't have these Dodge trucks like the folks have out here with the tires this big, and they ride over each other's houses on the weekend and stuff like that, But I did have a 62 Chevy Impala dropped right down to the ground, and had my hair slicked back and my white T-shirts with my black khaki pants that came up to here, and driving around drinking that Thunderbird wine, had my hair all sprayed up and pulled back like a Bakersfield tumbleweed, and listening to the Four Tops and the Temptations and the OJs and Marvin Gaye, and God, I loved it, man. It wasn't too long ago I was in my plumbing truck and the Four Tops came on. I just started sinking in my damn car, man, And I loved it because I became somebody, man. I have always been a man of images. I've always tried to be something that I've not. I've always been that phony. And I never want to forget that I always thought that it would be an image for me to fill that would make me right. And that was the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it startled me to death when I finally showed up for the last time in 1982, because I found myself at about 3 months sober, sitting in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and everything, it started to scare me because I thought it was another image. The language was different. The environment was different. And I started wearing different clothes, and I got scared to death because I thought, my God, is this another image that I'm trying to portray, and I pretended to be something that I'm not again? And thank God for my sponsor who snatched me up and said, no, you're not filling an image. This code of Alcoholics Anonymous is not something for you to have a masquerade. He says it's something for you to fill up. And you guys started doing one of the hardest things, and that is, at the age of 30, you were going to take a man who was 30 years old and walk him through childhood again and teach me how to grow up. Because I stopped growing up when I started drinking. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, man, I went through those little stages of a crazy, elementary kid to a crazy high school kid, to a lost grown man and stuff like that. And it was because of Alcoholics Anonymous I was able to go through that, And I love Alcoholics Anonymous for that, Like I said, I started doing these things, and the bottom line is that around 1973, I was arrested for writing prescriptions. I lived in Phoenix, and I went over to Phoenix. I grabbed my dope dealer, and I thought we would take off to Detroit to show him my roots. And we wound up in Phoenix, off of Central and Roosevelt at the Apache Hotel, right? 5 floors up, everybody's got a room, bathrooms are down the hall. Everybody has a TV, and it's in the lobby. $13 a night, and I'm running out of dough. I'm afraid to leave my room during the day. I'm afraid to be by myself at night. So I finally find a little bar down there, the Wagon Wheel Bar. It's a beautiful bar. There's no windows, just a dirty curtain blowing through the doorway, And there's a guy named Ernie in there. Every bar has an Ernie. Ernie's the answer man, right? You need a shoe. He's got one in the trunk. You need an arm, Everything's in the trunk, And I needed a job, and Ernie got me a job and introduced me to this plumber. I never plumbed a thing in my life, but the idea of being in your house just excited the hell out of me, And I loved everything about your house, Whether I'm under it or in the attic or in the medicine chest, there's something about your home and the things in it that I love, And he stuck me underneath this house, and he says, all right, kid, all I want you to do is hang copper. That's all I want you to do. And he gave me a transistor radio. And I'm underneath this house with a transistor radio. I got a pint of PM bourbon because you get thirsty plumbing, And I'm underneath this house, and I'm excited because it's a brand new house under there. You never know what you're going to find crawling around, And I started crawling around, and I seen this stray cat. And I go, oh my God, this is great. I've never had these things going together. I got a radio, I've got a pint, I got a pet, And I say, this is the closest I ever got to normal living, folks. You know what I mean? Jesus, this is great, man, And I started drinking that PM bourbon, And I got drunk, and I busted up through the floor. I robbed a lady of all of her jewelry, and some of her money, And then I went down under, and I started drinking again, and I passed out, and, after about 8 hours, the boss came back, and he's dragging me out from underneath the house, And then this cat comes running out with a bunch of necklaces on, Put me in jail for a half a year. I came out of there, went back to the Wagon Wheel, and bottom line, I got arrested for out-of-state forgeries and public drunk, and they sent me to Los Angeles. They sent me back to L.A., and in 1974, they put me on antabuse. For the first time in my life, I'm separated from alcohol. One of the things that has been happening to me all my life, since the time I was 13, everybody's answer, whether it be legal or religious or medical, everybody's job, and well-meaning people, is we could separate from him from alcohol, everything will be all right. And there lies the problem. They separated me from alcohol, and I'm not all right. And I become restless, irritable, and discontent. And there's nothing to look forward to. And it seemed like sobriety drove me to drink. If you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, I want to welcome you. I want to welcome you. And I know there's something about you. I know there's something about you that you know and nobody else knows, you think, but I know that there's something about you. There's something about you that makes you feel a little bit different. There's some things that have gone on in your life that you can't let anybody know about because they're disgusting and they're just terrifying, demoralizing. And I'm here to tell you that you're in the right place. And I beg you to find somebody sooner or later that you can talk to about this stuff. Go to these meetings. Listen to folks share their experience, strength, and hope. Saddle up to one of these folks that you can talk to and let them hear what these nuggets are. And I'm here to tell you, if you're new, you will not shock the people in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't care what it is. If it hasn't been done by this table over here and that one over there, it just hasn't been thought of yet. You will not shock the people in AA. You want to shock the people in AA? Get a commitment in a meeting. You know, I am not here. I'm the one that's supposed to change. I'm the one that's supposed to change. That's what this book is all about for a guy like me. I'm the one that has to change. Not the vocabulary of the book, me. I'm the one that's supposed to change. And I'm nothing but a drunken, losing whore. Thank you. And in 1974, I ran out of Thorazine. What had happened? What had happened to me is that they arrested me, and I was over at the Harbor General Hospital in Carson, California, and they picked me up for a public drunk, and they sent me to Harbor General Hospital, and the doctor came to my bedside with a little book like this, and he said, "Son," he says, "it seems to me by the way you've been living that we need to put you in a mental hospital and have them observe you for 20 or 30 or 60 days. And so they did that. And they put me in a little state hospital for 20 or 30 or 60 days, and I came out a year later. Totally observed, right? We couldn't find a damn thing in that man, you know, and they put me on this medication, and all this medication worked, and after a year they let me out. And in 1975, they found me, and I ran out of Thorazine 90 days earlier. In 1975, they found me in Alvaro Street in downtown Los Angeles, across the street at a Chevron gas station on a pile of tires. And I wasn't over there vaping. This point in my life, I was working every ounce of energy I had. There is no invisible line of what a person does or doesn't do for a drink of alcohol. And the nightmare of my life, when Don was talking about that inventory, was that no matter how disgusting or terrifying or degrading the act was, when it came to me getting a drink, I'd repeat it. And I couldn't stand that about me. I couldn't stand that I was so weak. I couldn't stand that I would do something like that again and again and again, just for a half a pint. And they found me in downtown Los Angeles. And they sentenced me to 3.5 years in the state penitentiary. And they sent me up to Wayside, California. And I'm up there, and I'm not up there, but about 30 days. And they arrested me on a public nuisance, violation of probation, and out-of-state forgeries. And I'm up there for about 40 or 50 days, and they put us in a bus. Big old bus, and they sent us down to the South Bay Courthouse in Torrance, California. I'm in a holding tank about this size over there, it seemed like. I'm on a concrete floor with these guys, and one by one the judge starts calling these guys out, and none of them are coming back. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm the only one left. I'm on a concrete floor with a Vaughn's bag and no hope, wondering, where am I going now? And a Scottish man with a patch come down the hall. And he opened up that lime green door, and he's standing there, and he's clean and he's sharp. He's got this smile on his face. He goes, "Aye, lad." He says, "Are you Larry Thomas?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." He says, "Ah, that's great." He says, "Come with me, son. We're going to AA." And AA? What the heck is AA? I've heard of OR and PO, but what's AA? You know, who's the Scottish pirate all of a sudden, you know? I've been hallucinating so much I didn't know if he was real, you know. "Aye, lad," you know. "Where's your parrot at?" You know, and looking back well over 40 years, close to 50 years, I know exactly what he was, because this room is filled with him. And he's what my book calls a trusted servant. And what made that man a trusted servant was simply this: he had no business being there. He wasn't on a panel. He wasn't part of H&I. He was a refinery worker. And he got the worst news of his life. And that news was that his wife was dying immediately of a terminal illness. And he knew she was in good hands, but he knew he wasn't. But somewhere in his meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, somewhere in his book study in Long Beach, somewhere in his step study in Las Vegas, that man would sit with you folks and grasp and develop a manner of living that ingrained in him this: that practical experience tells us nothing will ensure immunity from drinking but intensive work with other alcoholics. This works. And he took me to my first meeting of alcoholics in 1975. And I was ready for a long ride up north and maybe some lunch. He gave me a 15-minute car ride to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Rolled up to this dingy, stinking, rotten, filthy, perverted Torrance Lomita Alano Club, you know. I'd never heard that word before, you know. What the hell is an Alano? What kind of word is that, you know? Is it like an elk or a moose, you know? Watch for crossing Alanos, you know, and yeah, he rolled up to this dingy parking lot, and there's all the Alanos walking around, you know. Everybody had a nickname and a tattoo: Indian Genie, Captain Bob, Tennessee Bill, Singing Sam, Serenity Sam, Bicycle Ray, Santa Claus Ray, Dancing Pete, Whistling Butt. My God, I just left a bunch of folks like this, right? Little Moose was 102 years old. She comes walking over there. She goes, "Hi, honey, my name is Moose, and I'm expecting a miracle." "I bet you are." I said, "You know, I'm not it." You know what I mean? No. And then this big transvestite starts circling me like a helicopter in Long Beach, you know, and about 3 times around, he comes walking over to me in his new moo-moo, you know. "Hi, I can't wait to take you to a candlelight meeting." "I don't think so, big guy, you know." "Not till I get my ear, you know." A something-for-nothing guy in 1975 brought to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I came in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous. I hadn't touched AA. I did what I had done my entire life. I sat in a room waiting for you to do something for me. I've had my hand out my entire life. This sense of entitlement that I made my mother and father pay. I'm your son. I don't have to work. I don't have to do this sense of entitlement that I've had my entire life. That just because I show up to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I have everything that everybody else had to work for. coming in these meetings, waiting for you to do something for me, getting physically sober and mentally ill and leaving again because I had nothing to return to. I never want to forget the words of my now sponsor that I've had for 39 years. When the first time I heard him, he stood at a podium of Alcoholics Anonymous and said something like this. In fact, it was at that TLC club that I heard him. And he says, you know, when I think of sobriety, the thought of drinking and using drugs never enters my mind. When I think of sobriety, I think about the way I live. And you know, the longer I stay sober, the more truthful that becomes. And that seemed to be my problem. I kept going to these meetings, getting sober and getting drunk, and not applying these steps to my life. Why is that? Because, you guys, I had nothing to return to. How many times have I cleaned the slate? Have I told my secrets? Have I told the psychiatrist all the things in my head? And I clean that slate of my mind, and it becomes one big empty room. And there's nothing new in that big new room. But for me to start filling it with my old ideas. Because every time I stop drinking, I grow a relief finder. And it starts seeking out stuff for me to do. And most of it is not AA-approved stuff, you know what I mean? And I go for it because it's the only thing in that big empty room. And I start filling it with stuff that's not good for me. You can't be wrong with people and right with God. I cannot sin in private for lack of a better rule. What you don't see me do won't hurt you is some of my old ideas. Everybody else is doing it. I've earned it. All these kind of ideas killed me because I had nothing to return to. And from 1975 to 1982, I come to these meetings and I would stop drinking and not return to nothing but the way of life that got me there. And I'm wondering, and I would saddle up to new people and telling them, you're wasting your time. AA don't work. AA don't work for me. AA don't work for me. And do you know that now, after 40 years, I've come to realize that AA doesn't work for me. We work for it. I could not take any of the steps like you guys were taking because my biggest resentment was God. At the age of 5 years old, I was supposed to have a baby brother, and the baby brother died. And the first thought was, man, what type of God would create a baby and kill it? I'm next. I wanted nothing to do with God, religion, Jehovah, anything. And I knew at a young age it was up for me to work this stuff out on my own. And I was scared to death. But I tell you what, every time I called Alcoholics Anonymous, somebody would come and get me, and they were always clean and they were sharp. And in 1982, I was down at a mission in Long Beach, in Wilmington. Got kicked out of that mission. And I called this bald-headed carpenter, and he came and got me. My first sponsor, Don. I called him up, and I said, Don, I'm ready to come back to AA. Will you come and get me? And he told me no. He says, you know where we are. You know what we got. Why don't you get your rusty rear down here yourself? I'm tired of chasing after you. And I thought, and then he hung up. And I thought, my God, you know, whatever happened to that AA love, you know? I just heard it, and for the first time in my life, it was up to me to come to you. And something happened to me that morning. Nothing flashy or anything like that. But what had happened to me is I was sitting on that curb with that rug wrapped around me, realizing that at the age of 30 years old, this is the best that I can do with my life. And I did the hardest, and I came to believe, and I didn't come to believe in God or the big book. I came to believe in the hopelessness and the futility of my life with me running it any longer. And I took that 10-mile walk with my poopy pants and no hope. And I had to talk to that guy. And I waddled into that dang meeting and I found that man and I asked him that question. I don't know what to do with my life. Would you be my sponsor? And that guy lit up like a chandelier for about 15 minutes. And then he lit into me for an hour, And I fell in love with him. And I started apologizing for him for making all those calls. And he says, Larry, he says, I didn't come to pick you up because you're an alcoholic. I came to pick you up because I am. I never want to forget that he never talked down to me. And I was able to take that inventory with him, and go through that inventory and see those defects of character, and that entitlement that followed me into Alcoholics Anonymous. I know what it's like to have time in Alcoholics. And, all across this country, there are people working on their defects of character. They're just busting their chops. The last time I worked on my defect of character, I was 10 years sober, and I had a 3-year obsession with massage parlors. I was restless, irritable, discontented, and shiny, because I couldn't talk myself out of them. You can't talk yourself to your obsessions and think they're going to reason with you, But I didn't let anybody in on it. And every one of these defects of character that I still have toting around with me today have been reduced only by me not participating in them. You gave me other alternatives. You gave me people to call and things to do. You gave me actions to take. And that's the thing that's been saving my life, My sloth. I had this terrible sloth. I still do, And I'm the kind of guy who does average things expecting standing ovations. You know what I mean? I go to work and, I think the boss says, oh, Jesus Christ, man, look at that guy. Man, he just took a half-hour lunch. They don't make that anymore, you know what I mean? And I'd come like that to my meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. Look at that, man. He just put up his chair. Isn't he wonderful? You know what I mean? Oh, my God, it drives my little wife nuts. God bless her heart. And I thought, one of these days, I think I was about 10 years sober, I do something nice for her. Why are you always waiting for her to? And I thought, what? I'm gonna put on a toilet seat for her. No, she's earned it. I'm gonna, not a. I got some plumber buddies here, and not just a white plastic one. I'm going to get her a nice maple wood brass hinge. Takes 3 guys to bring it in, and put that on for my little Rosie, And I was so excited, man. And I laid that thing on there, and I bolted that baby down. Now I'm like 20 years sober, And bolted that thing, and we're busy like you guys. When we come home, we have things to do, and she goes to the restroom, and I go to the bedroom and the kitchen, get stuff ready, and man, every night, this first night I bolted it on there. I'm waiting for her to come out, and it's going to be great, man. I can't wait. She comes out, and she goes right to bed. Boom, just like that. I thought, well, maybe she's tired. Had a long day, So, this went on, and next night, nothing. This went on week after week, month after month, and just, Jesus, is she going blind? Well, after about 3 months, it's eating my lunch, and she comes out of there, and, I said, hey, I know it's late, but, that's a brand new toilet seat you've been sitting on in there. She goes, I know, and it's loose. I go, Jesus, There's no pleasing her, man. There's no pleasing her. And the sensitivity. I used to think that the longer you stay sober, the least sensitive you become. No, you become more sensitive because you need to rely on God more, right? Oh, man. This thing just wrapped my head up, man. It wasn't too long ago. Me and Rosie love to go hiking and stuff like that. And we're doing this hike on this trail, and it's running a little late. And I says, we got to get back. We got a meeting in a couple hours. She goes, okay, let's walk up here and we'll go use the restrooms. And we go over there. And she goes, okay, hurry up and chop. 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 Chop, chop. You're telling me chop, chop? You don't tell me chop, chop. You chop, chop. Chop, chop. What the hell is that? Chop. This had me for days. Chop, chop. Chop, chop. You chop, chop. You know what I mean? Chop, chop. What am I? Some little lazy old man that, chop, chop? I'll show you chop. How about pop, pop? Chop, chop. Huh? How about that? How do you like that, little Nicaraguan queen? Right? How about shank, shank? Chop, chop. You're telling me to hurry up, chop, chop. Oh, Lordy, man. I had to get a hold of that one, man. Chop, chop. You gotta watch him. I tell you, the most powerful thing with these defects of character, can you now take them all, every one? We ask God to help us be willing. When ready, we say something like this. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellow. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. God's going to remove them. But I need to take the actions. I got to be content with patient improvement. Well, how are you going to do that if you don't believe in God? How are you going to do that when you have no real connection? On page 62, he talks about, what's your position going to be? We don't care. Pick one. But when you sincerely take that position, remarkable things will begin to happen. No, you're not going to be struck perfect. But maybe these defects will be reduced just enough for you to be useful to Alcoholics Anonymous and do what happened to Bill and Bob at the Stateline guest house. When they came out of there, and Bob says, that man understands. He understands me. He identifies with me. He identifies with me. And I began to have a sincere position on this thing. Now, what was my position going to be? One of the things I always wanted to be was a son. I always wanted to be a good son. My dad worked hard, and I rubbed my mom and dad's face into a level of living they never knew existed. And I always wanted to be a good son. And you guys let me know that with this way of life, by watching you, that this is a good way of life. That I could become a good son. And as Papa Chuck used to say, why don't you just be... What did my mom always tell me? You're good for nothing. You good for nothing, little son of a... You just good for nothing. And isn't that what Chuck told us to do? Why don't you just be good for nothing? Just be good for nothing with no need to have anything come back at you. Why don't you try some common courtesy when you go to work? Why don't you try... Why do you need to win the argument? Why do you need to get even with everybody? See, you guys taught me all that by how we behave with each other during our meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And our life is one big 12-step call. What we do here, we try to carry on at home, be useful at work and play and stuff like that. I tell you what, these defects of character that used to choke me out for some reason or another have been reduced to where I can live comfortably and have some contentment in my life. Because you never know who's watching you, how you behave. You never know when there's a new guy getting ready to approach you. And he hears how you talk or what you did or something like that. Lord, make me a channel. What's in your channel? What are you going to pass on to that new guy? Hopefully I can pass them on what you passed on for me today and yesterday and hopefully tomorrow. Experience, strength, and hope. Hope for that new man. Hope for the alcoholic of our type. I love you guys. Thanks.